going to do another Warhammer The Old World video because we've already got some more information. Basically, they decided to give us a legitimate look at the rules, and this is exciting because I really didn't think we were going to see anything substantial until after Christmas. So this is a really good sign that they're going to start really ramping up information drops, and that we might be even earlier into 2024 than I thought. Maybe even like early February or late January. So, you know, pretty exciting to see. So they start off by basically just sort of, hyping you up. Bassinets are polished, arrows are fletched, dust is blown out of crevices, and Warhammer The Old World is nearing release in early 2024. We get a cool piece of art of goblins and high elves fighting. And then we just get some information that we're going to be looking at the strategy phase. So, what they do first is they tell us about game structure. So, this is the turn sequence, and they talk about all kinds of different little things here. I'm not going to really go through all that because you can just read it real quick. What's important is looking at this. The turn sequence is broken into 4 phases now. You have a strategy phase. So this is where the active player is going to attempt to cast enchantment or hex spells and make use of certain special rules before attempting to rally fleeing units. Sounds a lot like 40k. It sounds like Age of Sigmar, as I recall, plays this way. Part of me even thinks there's a command phase in Middle Earth, but I haven't played that in a while to recall exactly. But I do think a lot of their new stuff likes to have a strategy phase. Actually, I think Horus Heresy has one too. But point is that they're sort of getting it in line with their modern game design, and I don't know. I think that's a good sign as well, just because it shows that they're going to structure it in a way that it's in line with what we already know from them. Meaning they do intend for this to be something that is not just for the outlier group of players who want to play fantasy. They want this to look familiar to people who have never played it. And while there's going to be people who come into this simply because of like the Warhammer Total War, those people aren't going to have, again, the background in how the game played, but some of them might have started playing 40k or Age of Sigmar, so keeping it in a design path that they're going to feel comfortable with is probably for the best. Some people, the grognards are going to never be happy. We always have something to complain about. But I think making the game accessible to more players, we need to be honest. That's what we need. We need to be a noticed and upfront game that keeps us alive for as long as possible. Even if we never become a main, staple game again, being in production and being developed actively is better than going back to what happened last decade. So then we have the movement phase. The movement phase starts with the declaration of charges, which does seem to be after you can rally. So I guess that means you can rally and charge, unless there's a specific rule that says you can't. Um, so yeah, declaration of charges and charge reactions. That's good. Before you could like stand and shoot, flee, different things. Those are obviously to some extent still in the game. After this comes compulsory moves. So this also feels like old Warhammer. You would declare charges and then do regular moves. And finally, any remaining movement is carried out. Sorry, compulsory is ones you have to do. So I guess I'm talking more like frenzies, maybe. Um, Things you have to do because you have to go towards the nearest enemy. Or maybe like fanatics spinning around have to move. The remaining movement is more what I meant, where you'd move the other guys. And also, they can cast spells, or the wizards can, the conveyance spells. I assume this means spells that cause movement. And then you have a shooting phase. During the shooting phase, the active player shoots with those units in their army armed with missile weapons with their war machines and attempts to cast magic missiles and magical vortex spells. Um, this basically sort of feels like shooting and magic combined, like the offensive part of magic. So, nothing wrong there. To be fair, all this sort of makes sense. I love the magic phase, but I also dislike the magic phase. Losing it is kind of difficult in the sense that you're used to it, but for as long as I played 6th edition, 7th edition, 8th edition, it was always the phase that was like either the most frustrating or the most disappointing. Um, a failed charge is annoying, but rolling 4 dice for your magic pool, or even in 6th edition when the spells really weren't that great, you could consistently get spell dice, like power dice, but you often didn't have great spells to use them with, and you'd only do 1 or 2 spells a turn that actually would matter. So having maybe the spells spread out more is actually just nice, um, and will make it more obvious that we're going to have lores with a wide variety of spell types. So, overall, just exciting to see. Um, I'm a little concerned that magical vortex spells are still there. I really didn't like vortex spells in 8th edition. They were cool, but like if it's like purple sun flying around again, that's probably not good. But we'll wait and see. And combat phase. During this phase, units fight in deadly hand-to-hand melee, and wizards attempt to fend off their attackers with assailment spells. So I'm not sure what that'll mean. I mean, I can kind of gather from assailment spells that it's maybe them pushing back attackers, but I mean, I guess again we'll see, because I really don't know what that is referring to. So that's the thing that feels the newest here, is whether or not they just mean wizards can do spells that affect combats, or if it's to protect themselves personally. Units that have lost combat may be driven back or become broken and flee. So they have mentioned before that there was going to be a pushback. I really just assumed that would be like Age of Sigmar, where, or at least when I played Age of Sigmar, you would lose a combat and you would like move back an inch. I think that also happens in Middle Earth. There's a couple of their games, anyways, where I'm pretty sure if you lose a combat, you have to step back, and then the enemy can choose to either hold and stay out of the combat, or step up and follow. And at the end of the phase, once all combats have been resolved, the active player's turn ends. So that's a pretty like nice new turn sequence. I like that. Overall, maybe a couple of questions, but not ones that I expect are going to be that difficult to answer either. So it's just more just a lack of information, which they'll get to in a minute. So they're going to focus the next few articles, I'm assuming the next 3 after this, on the phases, because this one is specifically about the strategy phase now that we know what they all are. So the start of turn subphase, where certain units perform special actions or take tests. Again, this sounds very much like 40k does right now for anyone playing that. And again, I'm pretty sure Age of Sigmar does the same thing at the command phase. These aren't common, and their details will be clearly stated in their rules. So, for example, Stone Trolls would take their stupidity tests at this juncture, and it's also when Night Goblin Fanatics are placed on the table. So, those are 2 really solid confirmations that we have like universal special rules, and that things like Night Goblins are returning. So, I think, continuation of the pretty strong hints at this point that the flavor is going to be there for this game, and it's going to feel like Warhammer, even if it doesn't play like the Warhammer we remember and are still playing in some cases. And that's, again, that's good. Classic River Troll art. Love this art. These Empire soldiers trying to fight these guys off. Some dead in the water, some being melted by vomit, and otherwise just trying to kill these trolls. And it's not going well, as you can see. Then they talk about a particular scenario might give you special like victory conditions to help you, decide when the game ends. So they don't tell us how many turns there are, but this line here, this does suggest that there are ways to end the game early by just having a win, which that's fine. I mean, if that's the scenario, I'm totally cool with that. I like to have longer games, but sometimes having a game with a very specific goal, a very specific end point, that's also good because it does lend to quicker play, and it also, I think, lends to us being more aware of our armies and what's going on as players because, we see that, oh, this is the thing that's going to win me the game or lose me the game, so I have to focus on that. Um, but then, of course, it opens you up to mistakes you might make because you're not focused, and that to me is just good game design. Making it too simple means that every game sort of plays the same, but making it too complicated at the same time can also, have the same effect. Um, this is also where the character's special rules fire off, as they say. So they give an example of an enchanted item, a falcon horn of Fredimund, which basically means on a leadership test um, that passes until the next sub phase, the next start of turn sub phase, enemy units can't use fly. That's really cool. Um, this sounds like something the Bretonians had before the game died, as I recall. And really, honestly, it's just again confirmation that we're going to have special items. Now, hopefully, it's closer to what we had in between 6th and 8th edition, and not more like what we have in 40k, because I really don't like the 40k. What are they called? The enhancements. I don't like those. Only because you don't get very many, and because of that, you wind up with armies that just have absolutely piss enhancements. They're terrible all around, or they have such limited benefits that you're just like, oh well, this one's good, and the rest are just like, I guess they're okay, or they're terrible. And then you have others that are just like, oh wow, that's a great one. Oh, that's a good one too. That's also good. Okay, this doesn't seem fair that you have really good ones that are like obviously beneficial, and I have ones that are requiring me to build my army a certain way, or are just not good. I'm hoping we have broader lists of items. I'm not holding my breath on that. Games Workshop really doesn't seem to want to write um, complex army lists anymore. I'm just hoping this one's a little bit different and gets a little more attention. And where would you be without magic? You'll note that there's no magic phase in the game. As I said, that's probably not a bad thing. Instead, magical powers and spells are cast during relevant phases, so Hand of Mork or Gork is a conveyance spell, which means it's cast in the movement phase, for instance. However, the third step of the strategy phase is Conjuration, when you cast enchantments, magical boosts to your allies, or hexes, magical penalties to your enemies. Players take it in turns during this step to choose wizards who aren't fleeing to attempt to cast spells. Cool, if you're fleeing, you still can't cast like before. That's good to know, because again, it just feels like Warhammer. The Tomb Kings, for instance, might choose to cast Dejaf's incantation of Cursed Blades from the lore of Nehekara. What's a casting value? We'll go into more detail in another article because they want us to keep reading, obviously, um, and get excited over the coming weeks and months. I think they did this with 40k as well, where we just had like weeks and weeks and weeks of trickles, whether it was like, here's something cool about this army, or like, hey, check out this phase. I think that we're just going to see the same thing. And where there's only 9 starting factions, I mean, honestly, that's just 9 weeks of content if they just give us one a week. And that takes us into the new year, plus 3 more of these, so a total of 13 right there between the phases and the factions. 13 weeks. That takes us definitely into the new year, so that kind of makes sense. They'll just trickle out stuff every week, probably Mondays. I think that's what they did with 40k too. We got Monday updates, and then we waited a week, just kind of chomping for more info. So, anyways, carrying on. This one here, Dejaf's Incantation of Cursed Blades, and it's an enchantment. It's a casting value of 7 plus. I'm betting we're just going to roll 2 dice, 2d6, and you know, it'll either be easy and cast on like a 4 or 5, or harder, might cast on a 10. Maybe in that case there, maybe you know what, we might even have casting dice. That's actually my real hope, is we get casting dice that we get to use every turn. I'm hoping it's more set in stone than it was in 8th edition, because you really did get kind of like really imbalanced games because one player just rolled not that great, especially if their army was a magical army that was really devastating to your game plan. And then another player might just roll really great, dice rolls every turn. So basically, you'd have one guy getting spells off and one guy who never did, and it hurt the game. But hopefully, again, we have just some sort of way to get dice, whether it's per phase or per turn, um, just so that it is more than just rolling 2 dice and it doesn't feel like 40k. But I mean, that's just always me wanting fantasy to not feel like 40k. So, anyways, range is self until your next turn. Subphase, any friendly unit that has the Nehekaran undead special rule, and that is within the caster's command range. Maybe that's 12 inches, maybe it's 6, we don't know. They may re-roll any rolls to hit of a natural of 1. Hit of a natural 1. So, you're rolling to hit and you roll some 1s, you just re-roll those. Seems pretty solid. It's also when you rally fleeing troops, and you could rally all of their units that are fleeing, take a rally test, choose a unit, and roll 2 dice against its leadership characteristic. Whether this means you want to roll low or high, it really depends on what they go with. Right now, you want to roll high in 40k, so I feel like they might stick with that, which is fine. It's really not that big of a difference. Really, it's the same thing. And if you pass, your unit is allowed to free reform move and returns to the fray. Again, awesome. It sounds like fantasy. They're using fantasy terminology. They might just be speeding the game up. That was there always was a problem in fantasy. Your shit would flee, and then it would rally the next turn. You get you some decent soldiers. They got a musician for +1 to the rally. Your guys rally, pretty easy, and then you gotta like spend a turn turning. I mean, and then you sit there. If you are like a shooting unit, you count as moving. If you're a combat unit, you can't charge. Whereas this one sounds like you'll be able to charge because you have the rallying, and then you're going to have all the charges and movements before rallying was after charging. So that is a good sign to me that you're going to be able to have stuff kind of turn around and get back in. And that's going to feel a little more like Total War for people who, that's their introduction to the game. Once your guys rally, they just sort of turn around and they can charge immediately if there's range or start shooting. And they're going to have more info on morale in a later article. And please keep in mind that if your unit is under half strength, it gets -1 to its leadership. Sounds fair. When attempting to rally under 25%, you need double 1s. So I guess that does sound like you need to go lower. Right there, that's good. Again, I don't mind it going 40k style because it again unifies the rules across the games. But I'm a fantasy player, so I'm never going to be mad if it looks like old fantasy. So yeah, there is a bunch more they're going to tell us in the coming weeks and months, and we just need to be patient. So we'll see if there's another one on Monday next week, and if there is, I think that's a good sign that we're just going to get one every week until launch. And like I said, 4 phase ones, 9 faction ones. That's 13 weeks. Now I don't know if they're going to really just give us rules in that way. I don't know if we'll have one that's a week that's more in depth. Like maybe Magic will legitimately get a whole week. That doesn't sound bad though, because Magic does sound like it needs a whole week. So hopefully, if that is the case, we do get the Magic one next week or the week after, just so we can actually understand what they're talking about. It's all well and good to tell us that this stuff is happening this way, but if we don't understand certain key and core concepts, that's really going to kind of limit how much this is all going to make sense to us. Anyways, there's nothing else really to talk about here. I'm going to let you guys go. I'm going to go and finish getting ready for work tomorrow and, Halloween. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this tonight, is I knew that if I didn't do it today, I would not get to it tomorrow with Halloween. So, yeah. Anyways, happy Halloween to those of you that celebrate it, and have a great day. I will see you in the next video.